So hello everyone, hope you had a great lunch. So we'll follow with the next roundtable around the next ICANN round. And also we'll try to deal with the question of decentralization of DNS and try to understand if it's a good thing for security, for example, if it's possible to do it in short term, and which will be the resistance. And also trying to see if maybe the Web3 will also help this kind of evolution, and what are the main aspects related to Web3 decentralization, and is it a real opportunity or will it be a big problem for domain names to have this kind of Web3 domain name, or maybe not domain name but this Web3 OVNI or something. So as the panel change a bit, I will try to do basic introduction, but please feel free to explain more precisely your background. And well, I already know what are the main topics you want to deal with, but if you can give us also some precision about your main topic of interest, it will be really interesting in order to have the most fluid exchange between you. So here on the panel we have Nicolas Caballero, Chair GAC ICANN. No. Okay, so great.
Il a été remplacé par Monte.
Non, Sébastien Ducour a été remplacé par Monte, on m'a dit. So I will do something else. I think you will directly introduce yourself because too many changes at the last moment. So I give you the mic.
Ah, merci beaucoup, et franchement c'est pas facile hein, parce que donc moi c'est Pierre Bonis, j'étais sur le panel au départ. Je vais parler en français doucement pour laisser l'intelligence artificielle essayer de me traduire correctement. Voilà, je suis le directeur général de l'AFNIC et je suis très content d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui pour aborder ces sujets.
Et moi, je suis Chris Mondini. I am Chris Mondini. I work for ICANN. I'm the managing director for the Europe region. I'm based in Brussels.
Hello, my name is Martin Sutton. I was a former risk manager for HSBC Group, protecting against security and fraud risks online. I eventually actually applied for .hsbc in the last round of new GTLDs, and then worked with a number of other brand owners that had applied for their own top-level domain to create the brand registry group so that we had a voice at ICANN to work on changes that could accommodate the different model that the .brands introduced. Since then, or currently now, I'm working with customers for the next round, making sure that they have tangible benefits and secure plans in readiness for the next round.
Is this on? Maybe you just keep it that one. Keep it easy. Very good. So hello everybody, my name is Francesco Cetraro, and I've worked for over 20 years with DNS domain names. I've worked for registrars. I worked for registries. I was with affiliates for 6 years during the last new TLD round. And then I managed the launch of .cloud domain extension for Aruba.it, which is the largest hoster in Italy. Then I tried to escape and I got caught and went back into domain names again when COVID hit. And at the moment, since 6 weeks, so be kind with me on the Web3 stuff, I work for a company called Freename, which is a Swiss company that offers Web3 registry services. We sell TLDs and domain names, but also backend services and an analytics platform that we just launched looking at the different extensions on the Web3.
Hi, my name is Krista Taylor. I also am from TLDs as one of the co-founders. I've kind of got into this industry as an accountant. I did about 30 different applications in the last round. Then quickly moved to Paris, started launching them. I've worked on about 30 TLDs, including one of the first blockchain ones, which was .lux. We actually launched it on the London Stock Exchange, which was really cool 2 or 3 years ago. And really now just focused on the next round and doing things different and making them more successful.
Hello, I'm Monte Khan. I've been in the domain name industry since the very beginning, 1995. I was the first one to actually sell a domain name in the aftermarket and created the aftermarket for the industry. As many of you know, I conduct the online and live auctions for the industry as well. So we're a market maker and basically turn domain names into assets. I'm also the registry owner for .hiphop. I helped about 30 applications in the last round apply and also create their premium domain list so they can monetize their domain names in aftermarket sales. And I currently run the auctions at NamesCon. As everybody found out in the last room, I invented who is privacy. So I'm wearing a bulletproof vest right now.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really helpful for me. First thing, I would say that we have a very diverse and high-level panel, and I think in this context, it will be interesting to know what do you expect from this new extension? What's your main expectation on that?
So I think there's a lot of lessons learned from the last round. It's a long time ago since it actually occurred, but there's been a lot of work done within the ICANN space to review what happened last time. Some of it did not look good. Some of the things did break along the way. So there was quite a lot of fixing that had to occur after applications had even paid their money and handed over their applications in 2012. I think that gives us hope for the next round in terms of more streamlined approach, so it shouldn't be as long and arduous as it was last time. Some improvements to the rules as well. So in some senses where it was a bit awkward last time was things like prioritization, and we had a thing called digital archery that failed and they had to figure out another way. So there was a lot of time expended from all of that. But streamlining things like the back-end provider, the RSP, so that they are pre-evaluated before the application process, takes a big chunk of duplication that was undertaken in the last round. So that should improve efficiencies in terms of from application to delegation in this coming round. The other thing is more predictability. So where they've been able to fix some of the gaps, make it more clear in the rules and procedures, that should help applicants that are familiar with ICANN, but also more so those that are unfamiliar with ICANN and the industry to come forward and start to understand how they can benefit from applying in the next round. And I think last time round, one of the main issues there was it was absolutely new. It was an opportunity that was really intended to help expand the domain name space. And so there was a lot of probably ill thought out plans. There were some very good plans, but there were quite a few that expectations were just way above reality. In other cases where they hadn't really thought through their plans and how they were going to get value from a TLD. So a lot of brands applied because they were really just wanted to protect their trademark. But a number of them utilize it so well, but still others have not been able to implement any plans. It's kind of the length of time process, it lost momentum within those organizations. So I think this time around we're going to see a lot more purposeful applications with a good intent, with a model that will work for them, that's realistic. And so this time around, the planning and energy needs to be up front before the application rather than wait until delegation, after which time you've lost the champions within the business. You've got no template path to follow. So this time around, we should expect these to be realized and benefits gained from an early stage.
One of the other big challenges from the last round was the contention resolution process of competing strings when two applicants or more applied for the same string. One of the services I provided in the last round was the contention resolution auction process. The whole global community is struggling with the fact that the private auctions outside the ICANN process were basically gaming the system, and people were profiting from playing as if they wanted to actually run the string, but they were actually trying to make money by losing the string. So I've proposed to ICANN and the GAC a auction solution that eliminates the gaming of those situations, and where it will be a sealed silent bid process, so nobody knows who's competing with each other, and the proceeds will go all to ICANN to better the internet, so no one will be privatizing and benefiting and profiting from applying for the same TLG as somebody else is. So that's a big issue for ICANN this year and for the global community, is that the private auction scenario caused a lot of delay, a lot of time, and a lot of intention of not really being there for the right reasons, and we're going to hopefully correct that this time around. So I can answer questions on that as well.
Oui, alors nous à la FNIC, on est bien entendu connu pour être l'office d'enregistrement du .fr, hein, mais on est aussi impliqué dans un certain nombre d'extensions génériques du précédent round, et essentiellement des extensions qui sont des extensions géographiques, pour lesquelles on est un opérateur de services techniques, hein. Il y en a une ici bien connue, c'est le .Alsace, mais il y en a d'autres, .BZH, .Paris, .Corsica, et puis on est aussi un opérateur pour des extensions qui sont des extensions, on va dire, de marque, comme .SNCF, et des extensions qui sont des extensions de marque, mais aussi des extensions communautaires comme le .OVH. Alors, simplement, qu'est-ce qu'on attend du prochain round? D'abord qu'il ait lieu, parce que ça fait quand même un certain nombre d'années qu'on va voir des clients en leur disant vous allez voir ce que vous allez voir, et ils ne voient rien du tout. Et on doit leur expliquer que c'est normal, c'est lent, ça prend du temps, on ne sait pas quand, etc. Donc là déjà, qu'il ait lieu, que les dates soient respectées, ça paraît quand même quelque chose d'important. Ensuite, nous, ce qu'on en attend, c'est que ça nous permette de développer ce dont on a vu que ça fonctionnait. Il a été dit précédemment qu'il y a eu des échecs, effectivement. Il y a eu, on apprend en marchant, mais il y a eu des vraies réussites. Et il se trouve que ces vraies réussites, en tout cas en France, on les a identifiées dans les extensions géographiques. Ce n'est pas des réussites qui s'évaluent au nombre d'enregistrements, hein, ce n'est pas 12 millions d'enregistrements, mais c'est des réussites qui s'évaluent aux usages qu'elles portent et au fait qu'elles soient équilibrées financièrement et que ça leur permette de faire des choses qui n'étaient pas faites avant et qui ne coûtent pas d'argent à la collectivité, voire lui en rapportent. On trouve que c'est très vertueux. Il y avait assez peu de collectivités qui s'étaient lancées il y a 10 ans. On espère qu'il y en aura plus cette année. Et du côté, effectivement, des marques, il y a aussi un certain nombre de modèles qui ont bien fonctionné. Ce ne sont pas des modèles purement défensifs. C'est des modèles intelligents avec, encore une fois, des nouveaux usages. Des usages pour la cybersécurité, des usages pour la franchise, parfois pour des réseaux de franchisés. Donc finalement, à l'échelle des acteurs dont nous parlons, et je terminerai là-dessus, hein, des grandes collectivités locales ou des grandes marques ou des grandes entreprises, c'est un investissement qui peut paraître non négligeable, hein, on parle de plusieurs centaines de milliers de dollars, mais qui, à l'échelle d'un projet sur 10 ans, sont tout à fait raisonnables et nous paraissent devoir être envisagés. Voilà ce qu'on attend du prochain round, et aussi, pour finir, qu'ils permettent l'ouverture de beaucoup de nouvelles extensions, parce que c'est un des arguments des sectateurs du Web3 que de dire on ne peut pas faire notre extension point truc muche parce que l'ICANN l'interdit, donc on l'a fait dans le Web3. Bon, il y a un prochain round, donc il faudra juste déposer point truc muche et tout va bien se passer. Voilà.
Hi. from an ICANN point of view, I actually see a lot of commonality in the aspirations and the reviews of what we are expecting and what we hope for in this next round. Absolutely sticking to the timeline. But the timeline which is currently envisaged for an early 2026, April 2026, opening of an application window. The application guidebook with all the instructions at a minimum must be finished 4 months before that. We are already building all of the mechanisms in place to make the logistics of the next round happen. But you may ask, or you may know, why we are continuing to do, why it's in the future is because there are still remaining recommendations that the community has made that the board is reviewing, and there are discussions about some, I would say, not easy, important, but I think resolvable details related to things like similarity of strings between singular or plural, or some proposals that may want to make a public commitment to run the registry in a certain way, and working on how that could be somehow enforced, whether that's within the remit of ICANN. And also similarly to what we were saying about the auctions or some of the other things that were planned for before that we've learned from, an applicant support program for organizations that would not receive direct financial support, but perhaps technical support, equipment in kind. That program will be in place and ready, and even the evaluation, like the back-end providers, can happen before the application process. So these are some of the learnings from the last round. Martin and I know each other since that era, and I came to ICANN from Deloitte. So I was very sympathetic when a global organization thought, oh, if I put down my couple of $100,000 of US dollars and sign an application, then I will get my registry. And yet what we had to explain was they had signed an agreement not with just a service provider, but with a global multi-stakeholder organization that was still putting the final touches on a program. I believe that we are well-resourced. We've learned a lot. We have a very collaborative and constructive community that is working toward this. And all of the use cases, brands, geos, the idea is that this is in our bylaws and our mission to create a platform that the community guides us to create innovation and opportunity. Lastly, I will say from a global perspective, we are very enthusiastic about internationalized domain names in diverse scripts, because within our, say, point of view, which is a global public interest point of view, we are very interested to assure vehicles for the next billion and a half people who are perhaps mobile first and only, and using their alphabet to create community or be included in this program. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody here on concluding the details before the applications start rolling in, and on implementing what will be surely something that will open a lot of opportunities for a lot of us.
Thanks, Chris. And I just wanted to add on to some of your points there, which is, everybody has had a long time to wait since the last round, and often somebody says a year and a date, and it's easy to dismiss those. I think because of the way it's been approached this time round, we're very much looking at April 26 being a fixed date. It's unlikely to move. And the sort of backing to that is all of the work and activities that are currently underway, not just with refining the guidebook, which is still recognizable in terms of most of the underlying rules and processes. There has been some adaptations, and they are being worked through to make sure that they are valid, correct, and not ambiguous. So we've already gone through a process for the first batch of sections for the applicant guidebook where it's open to public comment. That's just recently closed. There'll be 2 further batches coming through. And so anybody can actually start to see what this is going to look and feel like in terms of an application process. Very much based on the last round anyway, but with some amendments. So I just re-emphasising that that's happening, plus also the communications. There was in terms of awareness and communication to the globe last time round, it was ineffective. So this time round, there was a lot more conscientious effort to reach out to all parts of the globe, and the IDNs is an important element of that, but more than just IDNs, it's creating that globalized internet that can rely on all different languages to reach to those parts. And included with that part is things like applicant support programs. So there's been some work already undertaken on that, and there will be publications going out soon on how that will work and how people can apply for applicant support programs. So I think there is a lot going on, and it emphasises the point that there is strong momentum towards that April 26 timeline. And for those that do plan, try and figure out what they're going to do for the next round, it's actually about now that people are starting to do this, to make sure that they pull these things together, the financial elements, the model that they want to operate, that work is beginning now. Thanks.
Okay, to continue on the subject, so within your expectation, we see that the timeline is really important. We see also that the new use cases are not always easy to create and to deal with. For example, for the trademark, when you have 2 different trademarks that want the same name. In terms of use case, so we will not start speaking about Web3 now, but can we consider other ideas? For example, we had a roundtable this morning about AI. Maybe we will see IoT also using domain names. Maybe avatar related to person or related to a company that will be officialized with a domain name. How would you create the technical aspect related to that in order to create more awareness for people and also to be sure that it will function well? And is it a project, or you consider that the actor will do it another way, more maybe with real sovereignty, or will they do it in a really worldwide approach like we have already on the web?
I'll do a first dibs on that. So I think for the next round, we're going to see a whole bunch of new innovative TLDs in certain areas. We talked about blockchain, we talked about AI, we talk about all these areas that didn't exist 10 years ago. So we're going to definitely see some new TLDs that come into those areas. How innovative will they be will be a question, because now there's a question of shelf space. If you're going to come out with this really great TLD, perfect, you will probably get onto that shelf space. But if your TLD doesn't have a really great idea or a really great audience, you're going to have to fight for shelf space at your registrars in order to be able to sell it. And that can be a really difficult thing, can make and break a registry. So if you're not, you really want to get on with, say, GoDaddy. GoDaddy is a big market player. If you're a small one and your pricing might be significantly higher, so you can do the lower volume, it's a different business model than a mid one where it might be $20 or less, which is, again, very different. So you need to really think that through in your business plan. And then also from the registrar perspective of how are you going to get them on board, and what's your audience, and really be able to attract that audience so that the registrar will carry you down the line.
I think I can share some of my learnings from launching .cloud and how that applies to the next round. I think one of the challenges there is, and part of like at ICANN, preparing for the last round, we always had the innovation and consumer choice. What I was a bit disappointed with in the end is that we just added a lot more domain names for websites and email, right? And I think part of the reason why a lot of brands then struggle to do something interesting with them is because there wasn't anything special about them other than a different string, right? And that's also partly where I'm now interested in Web3 as potentially other use cases for specific verticals where that makes sense. I don't know. I'm still learning, right? I think one key point there that Krista was also touching is the fact that registry operator will need to do a lot more work, no? In the sense that before it was the expectation, I go out with a great string, it's going to sell itself, I'm just going to see the money come in, don't have to do anything. And then the reality is this, shelf space, community building. No, you mentioned the geographic TLDs, that they're successful because they're serving their local community visibly with something of value. That doesn't necessarily mean they're making millions of dollars or euros, but they're successful in their own right. No? So I think the challenge there is definitely going to be that you need more than just a different string doing exactly the same thing as 1,000 others do. And that's going to be the real differentiator in terms of building a successful business around new TLDs, like any other product, not just domain names, not just Web2 or Web3. That's the same problem we have with Web3, the use cases. What do you do?
I'll add one, just go ahead. One quick part on that is for the next round, if you're opening a new GTLD, you need a good marketing budget. In the first round, we kind of had the mentality of if you build it, they will come. That's not reality. Every one of those registrations as a registry operator, whether you're a geographic, whether you're open, whether, you know, whoever you are, it's work. It is a new business. You are launching a new business, and you don't just get to open your door and get 1 million customers running through your door. You get to a little bit when you're, you know, in the first round and you're launching, and it's amazing to hit that switch and you're just seeing the registrations fly by, and that's awesome. But after that, it's a new business, and you really have to work for it.
You need a marketing budget and a smart marketing manager too. It's not just the money, it's how you spend it. That's the challenge.
Alors, je voudrais juste rappeler que un TLD, ça n'est que du sens. It's a meaning. Je pourrais faire de la blockchain sur un .web2 et faire du DNS sur un .blockchain. Ça n'est, là je pense que l'intelligence artificielle grame un peu, mais c'est pas grave, je parle à l'audience. Donc il faut toujours se rappeler qu'un TLD, c'est avant tout un sens. Et toutes les innovations technologiques, elles peuvent avoir lieu, elles doivent avoir lieu, il faut y réfléchir. Et elles ne sont pas forcément liées à une extension. Vous disiez tout à l'heure, on pourrait faire des noms de domaine pour l'Internet des objets. Sous .fr, ça fait 7 ans, 8 ans qu'on fait des noms de domaine pour l'Internet des objets et qui se terminent par .fr. Ils ne se terminent pas par IoT. Donc il y a quand même besoin de savoir ce qu'on veut dire en même temps que ce qu'on veut faire. Je pense que ça, c'est vraiment un point important. Il y a un éléphant dans la pièce qu'on n'a pas cité. On a parlé de nouveaux modèles ou de modèles qui ont marché. Moi, j'ai cité les géos, certains brands. Il y a d'autres modèles qui ont marché, évidemment. Le point luxe, pour d'autres raisons. Et ce qu'on n'a pas cité, c'est l'échec. Et l'échec, pardon, c'est les génériques. C'est-à-dire que, et c'est exactement ce qui a été dit là, c'est n'ouvrez pas un nouveau TLD en vous disant « Ah, les gens vont arriver, ils vont enregistrer comme si j'étais le .com » ou comme si j'étais le .fr, parce que vous n'êtes ni le .com ni le .fr. Donc les gens ne vont pas venir chez vous. Et c'est ce qui s'est passé avec les purs génériques. Les purs génériques ont eu beaucoup de mal à se développer, sauf avec des modèles qui étaient, alors on va dire au minimum contestables, comme le XYZ qui s'est développé sur de la massification pas chère et n'a pas arrangé les statistiques d'abus. Ce qui a marché, c'est finalement des extensions qui avaient un sens fort et qui ont créé des communautés pas forcément très grosses, mais parfois aussi avec un pricing qui était plus élevé que celui des .com, .net, .org, .fr, etc. Et qui ont justifié ce pricing, ces prix plus élevés, parce qu'il y avait un sentiment de communauté assez fort. Donc je pense que c'est ça dont il faut se rappeler, parce que si on veut tous faire de l'innovation de rupture avec le prochain round, on ne va pas y arriver, d'abord. C'est pas forcément à ça que ça sert. Une extension de premier niveau, ça sert à faire des noms de domaine. Voilà. Ça fait quand même quelques années que ça dure, et il n'y a pas de raison que ça s'arrête. Si on veut faire autre chose, on fait autre chose, on ne fait pas des noms de domaine. Hein. Mais il y a encore de la place. Il faut avoir un plan marketing, il faut savoir où on veut aller, mais il faut savoir ce qu'on veut dire avant tout, il faut choisir son extension. Voilà. Et dans les 2 ans à venir, on va avoir, de mon point de vue, beaucoup de discours très échevelés sur on va faire de l'innovation telle qu'on n'en a jamais fait avant, on va utiliser les noms de domaine pour faire des choses qu'on n'a jamais fait avant, etc. Tant mieux, franchement, si ça marche, tant mieux. Mais il y a des raisons beaucoup plus basiques de faire cela. Il faut juste être sérieux et savoir pourquoi on veut le faire. Est-ce qu'on veut le faire? Je vous donne un exemple, après je m'arrête. De l'autre côté, dans la salle d'à côté, il y a BNP Paribas qui montre son modèle .BNP Paribas. Ça paraît tout bête, mais dire à ses clients, de toute façon, quand je vous envoie quelque chose, quand vous allez sur un site, quand vous recevez un mail, si à la fin, quoi qu'il arrive, vous ne lisez pas BNP Paribas, c'est pas moi, c'est extrêmement luxueux comme manière de renforcer la sécurité. Et c'est juste avoir un TLD pour cela. Un autre exemple, c'est quand on fait le point SNCF, quand la SNCF fait le point SNCF, ils ont quand même basculé voyage-sncf.com, qui était le site le plus visité d'Europe depuis 20 ans, sur oui.sncf à un moment donné. Ils ont montré que c'était possible de faire ces bascules sans perdre la moitié de ses clients. Alors, ils en ont perdu depuis, mais ce qu'ils sont passés à sncfconnect.com, c'est probablement pour ça. Mais oui.sncf, ça a bien fonctionné. Et vous voyez, c'est pas des idées... c'est pas le prix Nobel de l'innovation, hein, mais dire vous avez des gares dans les villes de France et vous, juste grâce à votre extension, vous écrivez brief.sncf, paris.sncf, nantes.sncf et vous avez tous les horaires et tout le monde comprend comment ça fonctionne et tout le monde va très rapidement sur la bonne gare et les bons horaires. Voilà des usages qui peuvent être développés avec des extensions de premier niveau et qui ne sont pas pour autant voilà, des usages de start-up.
So, I think it sounded fabulous. Thank you, Pierre. But I'm going to apologize if I might say similar things. So please let me know if that's the case. But I was just going to rewind us back a bit. No. I'm sorry, I didn't understand. But I think just to rewind it back a bit, because we often think that we're expecting to see something very bright and shiny appear with a new GTLD extension, and there are just different models. And when we look at some of the innovation in the current new GTLDs, it's not always that obvious. So some things sit behind the scenes. It's, you know, there's some DNS that is untapped before being able to operate your own TLD for a brand, for instance. For restricted TLDs like a .bank, they've looked at ways to make sure that you don't apply security protocols or DMARC, for instance, at a domain level. You can apply it to the whole top-level domain. So it lifts all of that security right up to the top of that TLD, and it's then easier to manage as a default across the whole landscape within there. And similarly for any .brand, then they can apply the same thing. So there is quite a lot of activity that you're not going to see. It's not going to be visible, and already exists, and it helps to operate a business. It could be, you know, some of the distribution channels and network. It is all hanging off the back of their top-level domain now. So that does already exist. I think we will not see all these shiny new things appear in the next round either, because a lot of them is using a technology that works for those companies. It streamlines the processes. It makes sure that across their company and organization, everything's compliant. And when they do want to do changes, it's all uniform across that landscape. So there's a lot of advantages, but it's all an aggregation of different activities. It could be marketing, it could be visible, but a lot of it, you need to add on all of the layers of activity that go with that top level domain that really makes it so much more valuable.
Perfect translation.
It was,
Merci, merci.
I have to say, my observation is you were reinforcing Pierre's point, giving other examples. So it was very well coordinated.
Well, thank you. Well, it's really interesting to have this discussion between the reason why we have domain name, in fact, because it can be expectation related to make sense to the consumer, or expectation in terms of, well, maybe we can have some new specification. And I understand that maybe it will stay mainly about naming, and that's the reason why it's called domain name. We've seen example like .tel, which were quite innovative at their time. Maybe it will reappear in a way. Maybe it can appear through the Web3, through maybe bridges between the Web3 and classical domain name. What do you think about that? What will be the good way to bridge between those two words?
So I think the key important point to understand is that, like, you're talking blockchain and Web2, DNS, I think they serve different purposes. So I think the challenge here is understanding that each of them has an application field, and that if you stick to those, then there is a lot of things that you can leverage in one from the other and vice versa, right? That's part of why I approached the idea of getting into the Web3 business and learning things. If you think about it, one way I explained this is that DNS was built by 4 people who knew each other, and so it's a system that intrinsically is not secure because it doesn't have to. And then once we opened it up, we spent the last 30 years hacking an unsecure system to make it secure with DNSSEC, with DMARC, with SPF, right? Where blockchain instead is built on the assumption you cannot trust anybody. And so you have to trust everybody by putting it out there and building a system that cannot be changed and is distributed so nobody controls it, right? And then beyond, obviously, all the more, let's say, romantic approaches of like no censorship and all that, there is, from a technology perspective, a lot of uses of that technology for identity, security, validation, right? And the moment you start merging the two, you could say, hey, I could now, what I do with DNSSEC, which is ultimately cryptography, I could maybe leverage the blockchain to do that. Or again, identifying people in a way that is GDPR compliant. There might be a solution that leverages that technology as a distributed ledger to deliver that service that then you consume also on the DNS, right? And in part, one of the reasons I got interested, I started as a DNS guy. So when they first approached me for this job, I was like, Web3? Ooh, no. But then I looked at this and said, well, there is a lot of activity, even at government level, at EU level, of building projects that leverage blockchain to do stuff like identity services, like tracking your academic records so you can, it's easier for students to go and study abroad. So a lot of services that I see might be coming, and will probably coming to the market and to the consumers in the last 2 to 5 years, that leverage in some form of way the blockchain that will touch everybody's life, to the point that then today, in a way, you sell a domain name to somebody who needs a website, right? Tomorrow, you will be selling an identifier to somebody who needs identity. And so you're opening up a market to a different types of use cases. And then obviously you can bring it together and say, hey, you have your identifier on the blockchain for your ID stuff, and then the same string might be existing on the DNS for your email, right? So I think that's where the two, each technology has its own usage. I think the challenge in both sides is that some people are religious about that. So it's the value of the blockchain. The blockchain is a tool. Sometimes it's the right tool, sometimes it's not. The DNS is a tool, sometimes it's the right tool, sometimes it's not. And I see, for instance, a lot of pushback sometimes when I talk with people who've been in DNS a long time, that they say, oh, it's not for me, so nobody is for nobody. Like, just because you're not the target audience doesn't mean there is no target audience of a product, right? It's like, if it were up to me, there would be no football, because I don't see the point. But again, no. So I think that it takes, right now, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of dead ends. I think we need to keep the mind open, be discussing, be like critical of things, but not closed-minded.
As one of the few and early registries that bridged Web 2 to Web 3, which we just completed, we felt it was important to actually increase the number of Web 2 domain registrations by building a Web 3 bridge. And by doing so, a lot of the younger generation, and besides being in the hip hop industry and culture and community, many of the musicians, many of the social influencers feel that they're on the web if they're on Twitter, posting Twitter posts, Instagram, TikTok, but they really don't have a domain name. They don't have a website. They use a generic email. So when I first started in the industry, we emphasized the importance of having your identity be your brand and your domain name, and have your brand and your keywords in your domain name. In the new generation, it's not so important, at least they don't think it is, because they think they're posting on the social media platforms and they're gaining popularity, and it's all about the number of likes and how many followers they get. But really, they own nothing that they posted, because it's on the platforms that actually owns the intellectual property. So they lose that IP when they post to Facebook, when they post to Instagram, and when they post on Twitter. So at .hip hop, we felt it was important to bridge that Web3 application so that you can have a link tree that resides on the blockchain, and you can have some of that same identifiers and those same ID advantages to give your presence, video clips, other contact information, your crypto wallet, of course. And in the case of .hip hop and .art would be another example, dropping your artwork into an NFT that is then shared amongst others, or your music, and spread across the blockchain that way. So there's been a handful of hip hop artists, for example, that have dropped their newest albums and the newest songs into an NFT, and they became platinum artists in one day, and charged $1 for each download when it changed from one wallet to the other. And it gave them a whole new avenue of retaining not only their intellectual property, but also their revenue stream. And so that's why we feel it's important for that. And in turn, we then have them come back and generate their domain name registration in Web 2, so they know the value of having their own intellectual property reside on their website and having a .hip hop in their domain name, ending their right of the dot extension as their brand, letting everybody know they're in the hip hop industry. And that's the same with .art and some of the other extensions. So that's where we see the advantage, and we built this bridge. And I know that Unstoppable Domain Names is becoming very compliant to Web 2, and I know Freename is doing the same, and we're working with those companies as well. And so that's the advantage for us, and we think that will help grow the Web 2 registration base overall by using Web 3 as a catalyst to bring the folks that think they're online, but they're really not, because they're on social media.
I wanted to just comment from the ICANN perspective, and also say how lucky we are to have practitioners that understand both worlds, the classical domain names that you described, as you called them, and the Web3. My editorial personal comment is the nomenclature. It's a little bit like what Sebastian was saying. I wish they were called wallet names or block names, or but anyway, that's my personal, some identity, selling identity for other applications that could overlap or not. So you guys have put it very, very well, and I'm really just so delighted that you're active in a community that's discussing a way forward. I want to remind everyone from the ICANN perspective, so we're a global multi-stakeholder nonprofit organization. It's really with the aim of supporting an interoperable global internet. And we are very driven by our mission and driven by our bylaws and our documents. And so we have, within ICANN, we have internet cooperation protocols that talk about our responsibility for maintaining a single, stable, authoritative root. At the same time, within our bylaws, there are references to being open to innovation and allowing developments to improve these systems. So what we have is a really unique opportunity to surface these conversations. But in the meantime, I will say what we've done is, because many people are looking to make the links. So to date, we have published some research, and we are continuing to do research. My colleague Alain Durand, who I think a number of you will know, is very passionate and knowledgeable about this area and would be delighted to talk with any of you about it. So if you look at our Office of the CTO publications, which are easily found, you can find his first paper, and I know Alain is working on another paper on this topic. To the extent that we can avoid user confusion, to the extent that we can still assure stability of the DNS for which ICANN is responsible for, we will continue to do that while encouraging voices to participate in open conversations about how these systems can exist in a technologically innovative future that we're moving toward very, very, very quickly. So look forward to more research and look forward to more open sessions, even at future ICANN meetings, to discuss exactly these topics.
Okay, I'm going to switch to English. Not because I want to be polite, but I just want you to know that that I know how to speak. You know. Okay, but. Yeah, okay, translation is working because I'm speaking in English. That's the point, you know. I just wanted to point out that that's very interesting that we have this conversation about the Web3 in a conference that is called NDD Camp, which means Domain Names Camp. And the point is, to me, not that there should be or there would be a war between old grumpy incumbents using the DNS and nice startups using Web3. It's that the difficulty that some of us have is not with the technology itself. And blockchain, by the way, is a technology that had huge use cases in very, very small time. So that would be stupid to say it doesn't work or it will never work or something. It works already. So there is no question about that. The question that some of us are asking is, and I come back to what Sébastien said and to what you said, Chris, why do the Web3 people really want to take over what we are doing, behaving or pretending that they are doing what we do? I'll give you one example. Talking about domain names. First of all, it's not a domain name, it's an identifier. The domain name is an identifier. The IP is an identifier. The AS number is an identifier also. And by the way, we are talking about unique identifiers. But a blockchain identifier is not a domain name. And even the syntax dot something. I mean, it's almost something like brand, excusez-moi, quand on, brand infringement or counterfeiting. I mean, you could use star blockchain or dash blockchain or anything blockchain, but the people from Web3 said, no, we're going to use dot blockchain. and we're going to say, oh, it's domain names. So it's coming from that. It's coming from that with the fear that people will not make any distinction between these two systems and these two technologies that have their own merits but are different. And the danger is not that the incumbents are going to disappear, but the danger is that the unicity of the identifiers should disappear. And that's the question that the old DNS is asking to some of the people from the Web3. If tomorrow someone wants to create .fr as a blockchain so-called TLD, nothing is preventing this person to create it. There is no governance, no law, no rules, and it's possible technically. And if this same person creates government.fr, and if at the same time all the users have their plugin in their computer, allowing them to resolve blockchain as they resolve DNS, who is going to know which is the good government.fr? These questions are questions of governance. They are not questions of technology. They are not questions of what is the merit of this technology versus this one. But we really have to think and to talk about that within ICANN, of course, because it's a matter of making sure that the innovation can run without destroying something that has been built for 25 years, which is a governance model built on trust and transparency. And when you said, okay, blockchain, it's built for people who doesn't trust anyone, you don't need trust to use blockchain. But in the DNS, you don't need blockchain to have trust. So let's talk about that, but it's not as simple as the old versus the young or something like that.
So 100% agree, and that's why one of the rules that we've put forth at our registry is that the source of truth is the DNS side of things. And the linking of that DNS name is to ENS, which is the Ethereum naming system. But if the name is lost in DNS, it goes away in ENS, so both will not exist. And to answer your first question, the reason why there are blockchain domain names out there is because there's a whole nother universe of users that feel they have the right to use their own identity and call it what they want. And it's very similar to a company that started a long time ago called NetNames. I don't know if anybody remembers this company. NetNames was created by a company called Idealab. Idealab at the time was an incubator that had Mindspring, Earthlink, Jewelry.com, Toys.com, Pets.com. This was in 1998, 1999. They controlled about 50% of the traffic in the internet, and they'd had that plugin. And so .sex and .law and toys and .pets all existed on this network because they didn't want to wait till ICANN came out with their new extensions. So they came out with their own. Ironically, 95% of those NetName extensions are now new TLDs. That company went away. I was going to be their CEO at one point before that happened. But that's a perfect example of why it happened. And blockchain is a different technology. But I think the only way that this is going to be successful, at least in the short term, because I can't predict the future, is if DNS and ENS, or DNS and whatever the naming system is, are integrated together, and DNS is the source of truth. And that will help this whole process, and there'll be tools on the blockchain side that are innovative, that integrate with the DNS side of things, which many people think are stagnant because it's not very innovative anymore. But it brings both together as long as the source of truth is the DNS side of things. So that's why we linked to the blockchain, but created a rule that DNS is first, then ENS is second. So that's why we feel it works better that way.
No, I think definitely the problem is the people, not the technology. The error is between chair and computer. Exactly. No. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think there was a lot of wild youth coming in the beginning, and I think they're starting to realize that we need governance at some point for the type of use cases that are relevant for the large majority of people. Right now, even that is a niche, very small niche of people that know what Web3 is and use it. If we want to make it available to everybody, then yes, there needs to be a way to use that technology that takes all those things into account, 100%.
So what happened at the beginning of, say, Ethereum was that, of course, just like any other new industry, there's those innovative people who are extremely smart. They go and infringe on a whole bunch of names. They go and buy them for a penny, 2 pennies, 3 pennies. And they collected 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 fabulous trademark names. And then what happens is they kind of, shoot themselves in the foot because eventually they want credibility. Well, they don't have the credibility because now the brands aren't going to buy into that ecosystem because their name has already been infringed on and or being used for illegitimate purposes where people are now pretending to be X, Y, or Z, infringing upon their customers, infringing upon their trademark. They have no reason or no method to get their trademark back. And now they don't, they might come out with a blocking service or I'll sell you, this name, I bought it for your defense, I'm doing you a service, blah, 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 blah. And what happens is no one trusts them. And once there's no trust, the ecosystem just goes down because no one's using it. All the people who went and invested in the money there thinking it was going to become this new great thing then needs to clean itself up. And or somebody else invents something that's better that didn't try to circulate all of that to really, build the next generation of it that really does benefit all parties and does it right. So I think that's, another thing to consider as we go down this path. It is a tool, but the tool is still there. It's really a valuable tool and it's really great technology. Now let's plug it into the next, DNS and the next, generation of names to see the real value of what it can do. And, that innovation there, that's the cool stuff. And, in the next 2 to 5 years, that's what hopefully we'll see a lot more of.
Before opening the question to the public, I have a last question, mainly for ICANN and AFNIC, I think, related to, prospective governance. We've seen the creation of central bank digital currencies, which are blockchain-like digital currency, where you can also do NFTs, and therefore you can also do, I don't know what to call them now, Web3 stuff, that makes some domaining, identification stuff. So governments or European Union, region, will certainly use that. As we know, at the moment, the TLDs are mainly geographical also. It's it's a territorial approach more than a sovereignty approach. And we will not have certainly a global CBDC. So how could you help them? What will be your recommendation for those governments that try to experiment that in terms of, not ENS, but the naming of wallets?
It's an interesting and big question, and I'll back up with a personal recollection of the early days of blockchain applications, for example, cryptocurrencies. I remember being at Harvard with a bunch of very smart people that worked in this field, and they said that even though it's a technology that you can trust the technology and get your spot on the ledger directly, I couldn't because I didn't know how. So I still needed intermediaries, and then I needed to trust those intermediaries. So of course now there's an ecosystem of people who can have an app on their phone and have their accounts of their different cryptocurrencies, but that had to build up because not every one of us in the room immediately knew how to, get onto the blockchain. And so I think there's a parallel there. To answer the question of what you said from the ICANN perspective, I just have to really repeat what I said before. Some registries have approached ICANN to say, how can we integrate what we want to do over here using blockchain applications with what we do with you, and how, you know, it counts as something that's subject to registry service agreements with ICANN. So it's a very important question. So it's under discussion. There is research going on. As I said, we have been inviting this community into ICANN discussions for a decade. So we've seen it coming. It's entering a very interesting period now. But our number one, I would say, priority is stability of the existing DNS. Number two, the avoidance where we can of user confusion, of consumer confusion. And then third, getting all of the facts and research on the table to guide the discussions forward. So I don't have any ideas to answer your question directly, but you know, ask in another year.
Okay, from an ethnic point of view, if I go back to what Francesco said, at the very beginning, the beginning of times of the DNS, there was a bunch of people in a research office in France. They received a phone call, I guess, from John Postel telling them, oh, I know you, do you want to get your hands on .fr? Oh yes, that's a cool idea. And they started like that. No governance, nothing, except that it was a research thing. It was not used by anyone. And when it started to be used by people, then some organizations, not ICANN in the first instance, maybe more IETF or W3C on the web layer, they tried to make rules to make sure that it was working the same way everywhere and that it was bringing consensus. The thing with blockchain is that it's no more a research program. I mean, in 1986 in France, .fr was a research program. Now, today in 2024, blockchain is not a research program. It's a technology that is already used by millions of people in different areas. So there is a need to have something like a multi-stakeholder approach of talking about how do we manage together to make sure that every intermediary, as you said, are known, that they have some duties, that they have at the minimum level the duty of transparency. Is it ICANN? I don't know. Maybe it's IETF, maybe it's ICANN, maybe it's W3C, maybe it's Blockchain Consortium International, I don't know. But the approach that we had since 30 years at the registry level, local level, ethnic.fr, or at the international level, ICANN, which is exactly the same model, multi-stakeholder, different stakeholder, talking together, getting represented at the board, having policies that are discussed together, all that things that worked for DNS, it should work for blockchain, but I really think that it can work only at the international level at this point, because there is, I'm not a specialist in blockchain at all, but I don't see the geographical approach with blockchain for now. I don't see the French blockchain or the Italian blockchain or the American blockchain, or you know. So what it worked with the domain name system with the CCTLDs mostly, I'm not sure it's going to copy paste in the blockchain area, but something where we put together the people, and not only the techies, because otherwise it's not governance, it's technocracy, but the lawyers, the governments, talking together about that. I think this is something that is very important, and it can come only from the people who are advertising Web3 today. So those people who are coming and say Web3 is the future of the world should end all their sentences saying, and by the way, you are invited to my new international organization to talk about it.
So ENS, by the way, has a DAO that is starting that process, but there's a lot of ENSs out there, so that's the issue. So.
Questions?
Hello everyone. I'm going to speak in English. I have some experience in the whole thing. I've been creating and selling TLDs for 20 years or so. And I think there's a second elephant in the room that Pierre probably didn't see because the first one was so big. It's what Monte said about the young people and Instagram. I want to make sure that we are not, all of us really, missing the forest for the tree. We've all been waiting for the new round for so long that for us it's a sigh of relief, and finally we're going to be able to do what we've spent 10 years trying to do. That's great. I don't want to be gloomy, but we really need to think long and hard and think if we haven't lost the battle already. I don't know if the next billion users, to use a phrase we so often use in the ICANN world, really want new TLDs. That's the first point. The second point, to see that all those luminaries on the table are bickering about whether blockchain should be a domain or something else, or a dash or a star. You know, we have so much more to contribute to the debate. We have so much more that we could do to make sure TLDs are relevant to the people who actually don't care about domain because Gmail works just fine. Instagram is where their community is. What are we going to do for them? I don't have the answer, but I really think we should work on it together because that's the new threats we face, that's the new revolution we need. Whatever blockchain or whatever technology comes afterwards, what do we do for the user? And by the way, and I'll finish just now, but the geographic element is very interesting as well. As you know, Paris is going to host the Olympic Games in a few months. Try and type olympics.paris, try and type geo.paris. Why isn't that working? Have we failed the system? Are we not talking to them frequently enough? I don't know again, but I think we should be having a long thought and discussion about that.
So JC, you bring up the exact point. So how many of your children give a shit about their domain name or a website or their email? They really don't, because they're communicating on Snapchat and they're texting each other on Snapchat and on their phones, and they don't see the value of having a website or an email like we do. And that's because we came from the original generation that created this stuff. And so that's one of the things that I see in the blockchain that can bring people back to Web 2 and the ownership of IP, intellectual property, because again, as you post something on a social media network, it belongs to them. It doesn't belong to you anymore. So you bring up a good point, and it's re-educating the new generation of users on why it's so important to have your own website and your own communication vehicle through an email identifier that matches your brand or your name or your identity, and not have a generic email like Gmail, but to have a domain name or an identifier in some way that gives you your identity and gives you your own intellectual property. So that was my point. The new generation of users don't understand the value of that. And I think one of the jobs of us as an internet community and society is to re-educate on the importance of that, and that will drive more registrations and keep everybody in that security network where there's regulations, transparency, and guidelines and things for the future. Because there's a distrust in the new generation that they can't do what they want to do because this part of the industry is not catching up with them in terms of modernization and how they want to communicate and what they want to say and do with their phones, online, on their computers, and so on and so forth. That's my opinion, and if I ask my own children, they told me that. They don't know why it's important to have a website. Because they can sell things on Instagram, they can sell things on Facebook, they can sell things on their social media platforms. They don't need a website to do that. So we need to re-educate them on why that's important, and that will increase everybody's not only business, but keep things regulated and honest and follow rules and laws and guidelines and everything else.
Sorry, just to add to that, I think one of the other aspects to it all is trust. And so, you know, corporations that didn't apply for a new GTLD last time, they come back and they say, you know something, we didn't understand the value of it last time. But now we understand the value. We want 5 of these for our brands. Why do we want it? Because our customers are now confused. They're getting phished left, right, and center. It's costing us more money to get them to our site than we ever thought of. Our customers are getting hurt. It's going all the way down the line. So anything that's going to save them money is, they now understand the real value of it. That also applies to that generation there who are also getting phished. I thought it was our grandparents who were getting phished. The other side of it is, it's the young generation. They don't know to look for HTTPS. They're answering their phone and they're digitally, you know, just automatic. Oh yeah, I trust this guy. Bing, 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 bing. There goes $1,500. How do I get this back? Oh, it's gone. What do you mean it's gone? Right? They don't know because they didn't grow up in that like most of us did. So I think that's where we can add more value back now, you know, bring it kind of back up another level.
And I totally agree with what you just said, that the young generation has a different use of the digital tools. Doesn't mean that they are more or less knowledgeable. But the fact that a lot of people are on the platforms and social media is something that is everything except new. That's not new at all. I mean, the last round, Facebook existed already and was a huge monster. So there is no news under the sky. I mean, that situation already exists. And I don't think it has a link with the next round. Give you one simple example. During the COVID crisis, when the shops closed, because we always talk about huge companies and individuals. In the middle of that, you have all the SMEs. This is the vast majority of the people who have registered domain name. During this period in COVID, in France, and I think in other countries, you had more registration of .fr than opening of Amazon Marketplace. Has exactly the same purpose. I'm closed. I need to sell my goods in another way because people cannot go in my grocery or my... So I have to digitalize it. During this time, you had more opening of .fr for online markets than of Amazon Marketplace. So it's not a trend. It's not new to go to the platforms. Sometimes it's a good idea. Sometimes it's a bad idea. But I would not say that because young people or younger people are using Snapchat or Instagram. And by the way, we are using Instagram and Snapchat also, even if they don't want to see us because we are old and ugly, but this is another question. That's not because they are using these kind of platforms that the use of domain name doesn't exist for them. So it's a kind of saying, the battle is lost, let's jump to something else. I'm not thinking about a battle. This is not a battle. This is, we are running something that is helping 5 billion people in this world today, at the moment we are speaking. That's so much more powerful than Instagram.
That lockup created entrepreneurship, and so that's why you saw that. Lockup creates, that constriction creates entrepreneurship and open thinking of other things and other ideas, and that's probably why we see blockchain too, because of that.
Sébastien Bachelet. Plusieurs choses. La première, c'est pour compléter, en tous les cas, de mon point de vue, ce qu'a dit Pierre. J'ai l'impression qu'on est déjà passé par là, en tous les cas pour les plus vieux d'entre nous. AOL, CompuServe et compagnie, c'était des mondes fermés, comme sont aujourd'hui les réseaux sociaux. Et pourtant, nous en sommes sortis. Et nous en sommes sortis avec les noms de domaine. Et donc, pourquoi le bien ne pourrait pas se refaire? Monte, I would like to thank you because where you were talking about the auction proceed, you were doing, I don't know, hopefully some good business at the last round, and you understand what is the problem today, and you suggest some move. Therefore, thank you for that. I hope that ICANN community will understand what you are suggesting and how to implement it, and I hope that the board will follow you on that, and the GNSO too. Thank you. L'autre chose que je voudrais dire, c'est que l'innovation n'est pas seulement l'innovation technique. Je pense que vous l'avez en partie dit, mais je voudrais être... L'innovation dans les nouvelles extensions, c'est dans les usages aussi. Et dans les usages, il y a eu un certain nombre d'innovations. Pas tant que ça, pas autant que les 1000 nouvelles extensions, parce que beaucoup de gens pensaient qu'ils étaient le nouveau .com, et comme ils étaient le nouveau .com, ils allaient absolument réussir demain. La chose a démontré que ça n'était pas vrai. Mais on doit certainement y avoir des réflexions sur l'évolution technologique, sur des innovations technologiques, mais il est important qu'il y ait des innovations dans les usages. Et je trouve dommage, personnellement, effectivement, que le point Paris n'aille pas jusqu'au bout de la logique, que le point SNCF retourne en arrière. Et je pense que ce n'est pas seulement vrai en France, parce qu'on est en France qu'on parle de ces deux-là. Ceux qui arrêtent, c'est parce qu'ils n'ont pas compris qu'ils pouvaient faire une utilisation intelligente de leur extension avec de l'innovation, donc ils s'arrêtent. C'est dommage. Et puis, la dernière chose, je vous remercie de nous avoir présenté le blockchain point 2.
So very quickly about Olympic Games, because I had the answer, by the way. It's just because of the International Olympic Committee, because they forbid the registration if it's not olympicgames.org. So you cannot register under .paris. Even the city of Paris have not the right to do it. So it's not a lack of knowledge from them. It's just a legal and contractual thing with the Comité International Olympique.
Last question. Thank you very much. Last word, Francesco.
Yeah, thanks, Matthieu. I think just the quick is that there's no such thing as young people, old people. There's people, each one of them. Like so, it's deep. No. But the point is that it's very dangerous to put them all in one box. And I think the challenge there as well is that we're talking about platforms. That's content, and we said we don't deal with content. So that, but people don't want a domain name. People want a website. People want an online presence. So either that's the challenge also now with hosters and registrars selling domain names and people not interested, right? So it's bigger than just selling a domain name.
Thank you very much.